Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Girls on Track UK webinar. And thank you so very much to Motorsport UK for making this possible this evening. It's great to see so many of you with us this evening to talk women in motorsports with a focus on all things rallying. First things first, let me introduce myself. My name is Marietta Evans. I'm a freelance motorsport presenter. This year I'm presenting and pit reporting for Ferrari Challenge on a Sky Sports Formula One, and also I'm a presenter for the new all-electric junior Formula Racing series, Electric Racing Academy, which, by the way, has also been founded by a woman. So you may hear a bit more about it in this community as well. And I think it's fair to say that as a journalist or a presenter, I have done a bit of everything: MotoGP, endurance, indoor trial, touring cars, but I've never done any rally. So I'm really looking forward to learning a lot from our fantastic guest speakers tonight. Before I introduce you to our brilliant lineup of speakers for today, a couple of housekeeping announcements. Please remember that this webinar is being recorded and will be available after the event on the Girls on Track UK community Facebook page and also on Motorsport UK YouTube channel. So if you have to leave, you can't watch the whole thing, you can always come back and catch with this webinar later. Also, we have a list of questions that many of you have sent before in advance, but if you're watching this live, please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to ask questions live during the session, and we'll do my very best to take as many of your questions either during or after I have done the questions that all of you very kindly have sent in advance. Thank you for that. Now, please let me introduce you to our fabulous speakers this evening. We have with us Girls on Track UK Ambassador and Andretti United Extreme E driver Katie Mannings. Thank you very much. Good evening, Katie.
Hello, thanks for having me.
We also have Excite Rally Raid drivers Jasmine Philford and Claire Williams with us this evening. Hello, Jasmine and Claire.
Hello.
And we are also joined by Excite Partnership Manager Dean Faulkner. Good evening, Dawn.
Hi, Marietta. Nice to be here.
Good evening, Dean. Sorry.
I know I feel a bit of a fraud being the only male here, but
I always get names wrong. I mean, it doesn't matter how many I prepare in advance, I always mispronounce names. I'm very sorry about that. Before we dive deep in the list of questions that you have sent, and as a way of an introduction, let's quickly hear from all of them about the season so far. And I think I'm gonna, because she you can't see it, but she is the first on my row, so I'm gonna go with Katie first. Katie, tell us about this year racing season so far. You recently got a podium finish in Extreme E, but I think you have also been doing some Baja Aragon, some rallycross. You truly are an all rally driver.
I am, yeah. And often people ask me if I want to go to circuit racing, and I'm like, I've probably been go-karting like 3 times in my life, so definitely not right now. It's not what I kind of do. I actually started in grass auto testing, which I know we'll speak about a bit later on. So it's very cool to be, I think this is my first rallying webinar with Girls on Track as well. So it's very cool to speak really specifically about rally, because often when we do these events, it's a lot more about the circuit racing. So I'm very excited. I started in rally. I competed in the European Rally Championship for 4 years with the Peugeot Rally Academy before I moved into the World Rally Championship. And then I am now racing electric with Extreme E. So this season, yeah, I mean, last year we were a bit more lucky, I guess. We've had some mechanical issues and we've been bumped off the track a few times. So that's cost us a few podiums, but it's good to finally break through that kind of mental barrier and get a podium in the last race in Sardinia. You know, Timmy, my teammate, is World Rallycross champion. So it's so cool to be able to race against him and against a lot of my rally icons like Carlos Sainz, and to be on track with these people and learn from them is something really special for me. So we're having a good season. As you said, I've done some Baja, which I love. The adventure of that, driving through the rivers and the navigation, that's really cool. And also some World Rallycross, which is new to me, but it's really important for my side-by-side training for Extreme E. And I love the start. So if anyone wants to ask me any questions about any of those 3 things later on, then I'd be happy to answer them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Katie. Over to Jean. Before we hear from your drivers, I would like you to summarize what the Excite Rally Raid project is about and what is your role in it.
Okay. Excite Rally Raid was the brainchild of our team principal, John Hardy, a few years back. He's long hankered to drive in the Dakar himself, but has put his hand up and admitted he's too old to do that now. And I know he's listening in, he won't mind me saying that, I don't think. So the next best thing for him was to take a team there. And we've spoken about this before. There's a thing in this country that is focused on, or where the public are focused on circuit racing more than they are cross-country rally raid racing. So one of the ideas we had was to put together the first all-British, all-female crew to take that to the Dakar. So that's the aim, that's the vision. This is only the second year of actually kind of trying to bring that together. So it's still in the early stages, but that's the vision. My role in all of that, apart from keeping John in order,
he won't mind you saying that.
He won't. He'll be ringing me up afterwards and say, "Why did you say that?" But no, my role in that is fairly widespread. I mean, the main function is the commercial side of the team, so partnership, sponsorships, because no team can operate without funds, and in this current climate, that's not the easiest of jobs to do, but we are making progress on that front, and we're hopeful of we've talked about some plans later on, but we're hopeful of fulfilling those plans in the next 2-3 years.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now let's hear from Jasmine. Jasmine, you recently posted on LinkedIn, and I'm going to quote, "It's all getting quite surreal now. I have followed Katie Manning for years, and now I'm going to be on a webinar with her." And here you are. And actually, I think you deserve to be here for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to make you be the one who introduce yourself to the audience. What's your racing background, and where are you currently racing with Excite Rally Raid?
Okay, well, thanks for embarrassing me there.
It was so sweet, I have to say. It was very sweet.
Yeah, so I've probably come from a bit of an unconventional background. I've been doing a sport called comp safari, or competitive safari, for on and off probably 10 years now, but mostly navigating for the first sort of half of that with my dad. That's how I got into it. So it's kind of, for people who don't know, it's a single venue type of racing, off-road. You don't have pace notes or any of that kind of stuff. So it's very grassroots. You know, you can do it with a standard production vehicle all the way through to something that's created solely for that purpose. So I started driving probably 4 or 5 years ago doing that. Had some success, and then last year I competed in the British Off-Road Championship with the Excite team. They were also competing in that championship, and that's how we all met. And then this year, I think I met the team at a dinner dance around this time and got talking, and that's how I ended up on the team. So
fantastic. Thank you very much. And now over to Claire. For those who don't know you yet, Claire, could you tell us about your racing career and what have you been up to this year? Because I believe besides racing, you have also been quite busy going to a couple of WRC events as team logistics coordinator. So lots going on for you as well.
Yeah, so I started, first of all, this year has been a bit of one of those years where I'm trying different things. Pretty much not saying no to anything, and sort of if I don't know how to do something, I'll figure it out as I go along. So I started rallying in 2020. Started off road rallying, so they're like navigational exercises done throughout the night, just on an ordnance survey map, and pretty much went from there. Really, I had no interest in rallying before I actually started road rallying. I just happened. I was taken along to Wales Rally GB in 2007, and I absolutely fell in love with the smell, the noise, and everything with it, and eventually just started competing myself. And it's just gone from strength to strength there, really. I started then single venue rallying, and then went on to obviously doing bigger events, and here I am. So I've competed the last couple of years, last few years in the British Rally Championship for driving, which has been quite good. I enjoyed quite a bit of success with that. And then obviously in 2020, I got in touch with Excite Rally Raid about the possibility about doing Dakar. So even though my background is largely rallying, I do enjoy bringing in some different disciplines, dimensions, and hopefully they sort of, you can cross-reference them a bit. So whatever I learn in rallying, I can bring to rally raid events like Baja's, and then vice versa as well. Hopefully, doing these kind of events will help me bring something back to rallying as well. And yeah, you are quite right. This year I have been on a few WRC rallies. I was contacted by M Sports just before Finland, and they asked if, they just said that they needed a bit of help on events. I had very little clue that it was going to be a logistics job, but no, I've had a great time with them. They asked for me to come back and help in Ypres last week, and I'll be in Greece in a couple of weeks as well doing the same job. So really grateful for the opportunity they've given me as well. And yeah, so this year, like I said, it's just been one of those where I've patched together a season, doing different things, and also did, I hope Dean won't mind me saying this, but did a bit off-roading with Bowler as well. So that was quite good as well, and that was with Mr. Mark Higgins. So that was an interesting spin. No, and I organised events as well, so I've got my hand in that pie as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, let's move now to the questions that so many of you have sent in advance. And remember that if you're watching live, you can use the Q&A function to also leave questions, and I'll see how many I can ask within the next hour. Now, first question sent in advance. Erin wants to know, and I think the three of you could answer, best place you've ever raced. Claire, wherever we could begin with you.
Right, okay, so one of my favorite events ever was actually Ypres when I competed on in 2017. That was an absolute amazing experience, but being Welsh, I can't actually say that. It's got to be Wales. I think we've got some of the best gravel stages on the planet, and I absolutely love competing in Wales. As well as that I can pronounce the stage names and the places as well. I'm fluent in Welsh, so that helps. No, I've had so many fond memories rallying all over the place that it always is nice to come home. But yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said for the Welsh stages, and yeah, I'm looking forward to competing on them again at the end of the year as well.
Fantastic. Jasmine?
I think mine would probably have to be a site that probably no one's heard of, which is up in Yorkshire, and it's called Pickering, and it's a tiny little village. But we did obviously things that I've been doing in a single venue, but it's an awesome site with sort of every terrain that you could possibly imagine there. So yeah, we've raced there twice now, and last year was actually a really, really good event. I actually crashed, but other than that, it was great. And then had a successful event there this year, and yeah, I think I've had probably the most enjoyable race for that venue.
Fantastic. Claire, so Katie, sorry.
That's all right. Oh, it's such a tough question. I love going, like, when you go rallying, you go to places that aren't typically tourist places. So I always love, like, you get a real sense of the local culture rather than just going somewhere that you book a holiday to. So I think that's what I love about rally. I think in terms of my favorite, it would either be in the European Championship. There's a round in the Azores, which is literally one of the stages goes around the rim of the volcano. And you can actually, like, it's crazy that they allow it, but you get it wrong and spin, which I have done once. You can actually, like, you could fall into it's kind of a dormant volcano. So it's a beautiful lake in the middle. I don't know if anyone's been to the Azores on holiday, but it's just the most surreal buzz when you're driving there, because the surface that you're driving on is like volcanic ash. So it's super slippery. And every now and then you're just kind of looking over, and it's so, the roads are so technical. So for a co-driver, it's the hardest stage for them not to get lost. So, and I think other than that, in Extreme, it would have to be Greenland, because just going, like, it was where we were was so remote. They had to get a charter plane to take the drivers up to the race location. And then we got to walk on the ice sheet, and it was an experience that I'll never have again. And then racing on an area that it used to be ice and is basically now the gravel silt that's been left behind. And having, like, real battles on track, and then actually remembering where you were. It was like this weird juxtaposition all weekend. We had to stay on the ship, like the cargo ship that transports the cars around the world, because there was no hotels. Hire cars were the local people's cars that the championship had rented from them. So it was like it was a real kind of adventure.
And I think you did quite well in Greenland.
I was biased, yeah, we did win, but other than that, I think across all of the other drivers, like chatting with having dinner next to Seb Loeb, and he was telling me about he actually stayed on after the event to do another flight across all the icebergs because he couldn't take in how special it was. And when you kind of hear that, someone that's traveled the world and had as much success as he had, and it still had such an impact on him, it was just a really magical place.
Fabulous. Next question is from Sophie. Sophie says, how is diversity positively impacting motorsport, and what changes do you see now that wouldn't have happened 5 years ago? I'm actually going to go first with Dean for this answer, because I think I'm not talking about anybody's age, but I think you may have been working in motorsport for longer than us. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
I'm not sure I've been in motorsport longer than some of the ladies around here, Marietta. But I mean, the positive impact of diversity has got to be an obvious one, is wider role models for those coming through afterwards. Whether that's gender, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's class-based, just that the spread of people involved in the sport. I mean, I think we'll be first to admit that we're a long way from being perfect in that, yet there's still a long way to go, whilst motorsport and indeed other sports as well have made a lot of progress in the past few years on that. It's probably only 5 years ago or so we saw more girls stood by cars than we did in them, So the bigger range of role models for people to follow, and I guess one of the positive impacts as well is by doing that you open up a skill set that previously wasn't there for the sport. We'd have been narrowly focused on certain universities or certain groups of people to come and work within the motorsport industry, and others were kind of completely excluded that had as much, if not more, to bring than some of those that were in the sport already.
Katie, I could see you nodding in agreement with Gina. What are your thoughts?
Sorry, I've muted myself. I've got dogs in here and I know they're just going to start barking. I think it's changing so quickly, like between year on year. Like when I started in the European Championship, I remember being like one of the only girls that was competing. And now I'm in a championship where every single team has a female, and it's really cool. I think the way that it's evolving. What I like about the direction that it's going is that hopefully one day we've inspired enough girls to get in at the grassroots level so that they will have, when you think of like motorsport and you think of the pool that's coming in, 95% of that's starting karting or auto testing or whatever it is are male at the minute. And then if you've only got 5% of females, the chances of you finding one that has all the attributes to be a champion is that much smaller than it is for the guys. So I'm hoping that if we can get enough girls coming in at the right level, then it will filter through in the next few years, that it will become, these are drivers. And ultimately, I think when Susie Wolf first started Dare to Be Different, I was an ambassador in that campaign. And she was sort of saying to me, we have to just be known as drivers, not as female drivers. So although I think it is at the minute going to take, female seats that are having to be there like they are in Extreme E for the talent to be nourished. And actually, I think the biggest thing for females is actually giving them an opportunity, giving them budget to race. The talent that we've seen in Extreme E has come on so much because the females have had the same opportunity that the guys have had. And that might sound crazy, but just finding the budget to go and race. Even when I was doing European Championship, I was on my teammates' secondhand tires all the time. So having an opportunity where it's a seat that's there and your job is to turn up and drive and train, and you have everything that's exactly the same, access to data engineers, access to testing, access, and it's in the team's interest for you to be fast. I think that's when the steps really start to come on. So I'm all for, creating seats for females in with the men and letting them learn from each other and letting them learn for the fastest driver, whether that's male or female. I'm not so keen on, segregating and having a female class or a female championship. I'm much more in for putting the budget into the girls that are showing promising talent and nurturing that so that they can show what they can do against the guys, because it's already happening in Extreme E. There's girls and guys are swapping times and females are beating the men on track, which is really exciting.
Thank you very much, Katie. Claire, Jasmine, based on your experiences, how do you feel about this question?
I am quite fortunate that I've always believed that rallying is one of the most inclusive sports actually on the planet. You obviously have sports where there's a female part and a male part. Rallying is one of those very rare instances where the women can actually or do compete with the men in the same rally. A woman can win the rally outright, and I think in that respect, I think we're really fortunate that we're in that kind of sport, and that's one thing that I really do love about it. What I will say is that for any girl who sort of thinks maybe that it's a male-dominated sport, correct, it is. But I have never felt for one second that the guys sometimes see me as a woman or a female, sometimes they see me as a fellow competitor, you know, and they do, the girls in the sport, they do sort of, they love having us there, you know, and they're encouraging us. And like Katie said, you know, it's about talent as well. I'm all for whether you're male, female, it should be about the talent. And I think rallying does give that opportunity to the girls. But like I said, you know, the guys are really encouraging. They want women in the sport. They love having us there, you know, and if you're really good at your job, they love that even more. And I think in that respect, I'm really grateful that we're in that kind of, you know, thing that I can compete with the guys, you know. You know, I know a few female drivers that literally will take the fight to the men, and the men actually relish it as well. You know, they enjoy the challenge, and but it should be seen as competitive, you know, competitors rather than, you know, male female. And like Katie said, it shouldn't be about, you know, a female division or anything like that. I like the fact it's, well, you're a competitor, you know, you're not male female, you are just a competitor on that rally, and I love that fact of it. And like I said, if any woman sort of thinks, oh, it's not for me, it's male dominated, no, it's really not. It's one of those where male female you get stuck in, and if you really want to do it, come along, it's good fun.
Thank you. Jasmine?
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt that motorsport really is one of the most equal types of sport you could do, because it's not about physicality, it's about skill. So really male, female should never come into it. I think certainly coming from a very grassroots background, you know, I must say there is very little diversity in what I've been doing. I mean, I think I could probably only name 4 female drivers in my entire sport, and I'm one of them. So I think trying to figure out why that is probably the issue. But it's really encouraging to see, you know, things like this webinar and you know, the governing body of motorsport kind of trying to tackle this, and everything that Katie's been saying, I think is really encouraging. So we're definitely going in the right direction. Hopefully, as has been said, one day we won't need to be having these conversations anymore, because it will just be people competing, and yeah, we won't need to talk about it anymore.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Constanza, who had sent a very similar question about males and females competing together. And I feel like we have sort of answered this. So thank you for the question. And we're going to move to the next one. And this is from a different Sophie. How did you get into rallying? I think this is a very important question for everybody watching now or later who wants to follow your steps. Jasmine, let's begin with you.
Yeah, so I basically got into it through my dad. My dad raced for years as I was a kid, and as soon as I was old enough, which I think was 16, is when you can get in as a passenger. I went with him to a comp safari in Salisbury Plain. It was sort of depths of winter, really horrible day. And I was so excited, and we got about, I don't know, 30 yards off the start line, and then it broke down and we went home, and that was my first racing experience. But that, you know, that feeling of launching off the start line kind of just, yeah, you get bitten by the bug. So yeah, I think I navigated for him for a few years because I was at uni and stuff like that, and then started driving a few years ago. He basically upgraded to another car and gave me his old one, and that's how I ended up starting to drive. So yeah, I suppose I'm sort of an example of someone who's really come from the bottom, where people can race in that sport on all sorts of budgets. So it's nice, and everyone helps each other as well, which I think is really good.
Claire?
So I went with my boyfriend at the time to watch Wales Rally GB in 2007. I've got no background in rallying before that. And I just got bitten by the bug. It was the smell and the noise of the WRC cars going through the woods. And then we just started going to watch more and more rallies. All of a sudden I was interested. And eventually he said to me, he said, oh, can I buy a rally car? Said, yeah, you do what you want. And next thing he said, oh, you can navigate. And that was the end of that. So we went to a local motor club, got chatting to a few competitors who were already there, explained that probably road rallying was what we wanted to do, and that's what we ended up building the car for. So we did our first road rally together in 2010, and I remember it was one of the, well, I was terrible. I won't lie, I was absolutely terrible my first event, and but that didn't stop me from not being able to sit down afterwards. I was pacing, I was so excited, I was absolutely buzzing, and I thought, right, when's the next one? And it developed from there. I ended up doing stage rallying then, but I I went to my local motor club. That's speaking to like-minded people, and they were teaching me basically how to navigate. And yeah, I thought I got it all in my head, and then when I got there, I was like, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. But you learn on the job. So
Katie, Matthew wants to know, how old were you when you got interested in motorsport? I guess a baby in your case, no?
Can I just say, like, furthering from Claire's point, if anyone is starting motorsport and you're just going to your first event, we were all terrible at our first event. I remember, like, my first ever time when I sat in the past, no, actually, my first kind of lesson in a rally car, I was in like a 208 R2, which is quite a powerful kind of junior car. I was at a test day, so it was kind of out of my depth. I hadn't done any rally. And I went up and down this road with it in road mode, and it felt like the most powerful, coolest, like fastest thing of my life. And I was sat next to French champion, and I thought like, oh, I've done quite well there. He must be quite impressed. And then he turned around and he said to me, okay, yeah, that was fine. Do you want to put it in stage mode now? And I was actually just in road mode. So that just you as Claire said, you're absolutely buzzing and you love the feel for it, but don't be put off if you feel like you're not doing very well in your first events, because everybody starts there. I started, so yeah, to answer your question, my dad was, well, he never had the budget to do it properly, but he was a rally driver. He competed.
So it runs in the family.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. He started in the kind of European, that like an EPA, actually, that was one of his favorite rallies. And then that ended up being my first rally as well. But I actually started in something called grass auto testing, which was literally in a car from a scrapyard that I took along every Wednesday night when I was 14. And that's where I learned sliding, handbrake turns, and the kind of car skills that you then use in rally. But it was hard. When I was looking at going, my first year in rally was straight into the European Championship, because when I was looking at budgets for doing British or European, they were pretty similar. And actually, I found it easier to get sponsorship for European stuff because it was there was a bit more coverage of it. So. But then it meant I was in with the European level rather than a national level. So for me, it was like a real baptism of fire. And I had to have a really thick skin because my first races were, you know, against the fastest juniors in the world. Some of them are now in WRC cars at the top. So, yeah, I think the biggest lesson for me was don't be put off. And also it's super hard to find sponsorship, but keep going and try not to be too downhearted by it, because there's always going to be people still at my level, like in World Rallycross Championship now, there's still people with more budget that can test more than you, that can throw more at it, but you can only focus on your lane and what you've got and make the best of that, I think.
Fantastic, great advice. And since we are talking about how to get in motorsport, there is something very exciting that I wanted to share with all of you this evening, and that is that Motorsport UK has just launched a new initiative called a street car to get more people into grassroots motorsports in a very affordable way. And if this is something that is of interest for you, which I'm sure it is, keep an eye on the chat function, because I believe our lovely program manager Jennifer is going to share the link to the street car initiative there. So have a look, because I think that might help all of you who are thinking of how can I get into motorsport, how can I go get racing or driving rally car or any other discipline. Next question, and this is from Rosie to Katie. If you were to have the chance in an F1 car, how different do you think it would be to driving a rally car?
Oh, very different. I had the chance a couple of years ago to sit in Pierre Gasly's F1 car at Silverstone, and it was like the smallest space I've ever been in my life. And I was so claustrophobic in there. It was incredible. The seat was so tiny. He has the smallest hips in the world. And also the complications of the steering wheel. It's just like what they're able to do and how they're able to fine tune things, and listening to the radio of how he thinks he can find 1/10 in the lap, like, you know, how dialed in they are is so impressive in circuit racing. I think the techniques are very different in rally. I've driven I think it was a Formula 2 car before, and I loved it. I mean, you know, it is a completely different sensation. I think what they're working with a lot more is working with their engineers and setting it up and being repetitive every kind of lap. Whereas in rally, I think there's a saying in track racing, they see the same corner 1,000 times, and in rally you see 1,000 corners once. So for us, it's a lot more about being instinctive, and I that's the challenge that I enjoy coming up, you know, whether it's on a Baja and finding a river in the middle of the track and having to cross it, or whether it's on a stage rally and you're on dry tires and it starts to snow. All of these sorts of things that actually take a lot, like you have to dig deep and really use your intelligence as a driver, but also your kind of skills behind the wheel. I think that's at the end of the rally, when you've achieved something like that, that's when you have the biggest sense of satisfaction, even if you haven't necessarily had a great result.
Thank you, Katie. And I'm going to go now to some of the questions that people are sending live using the Q&A function, which you can also do. This is from Simra. What do you find the most challenging about rallying? And what do you love about the variety of challenges? Well, talking about challenges in rallying, I think I'm going to go now back to Dean. I want to understand the challenges of getting a team into a rally championship or into a rally series, and getting the sponsors and getting the team up and going, and fighting for the aims that the project and the team has. Yeah,
we started from ground zero with this particular team. We had a history of wanting, or our principal had a history of wanting to compete at the Dakar. We've been in stage rallying for more years than he'll care to remember. But the challenge of him taking, shall I say, a standard male team, for want of a better expression, to the Dakar was twofold, really. One, there was nothing unusual about it. And two, the climate that we were operating in is not particularly conducive at the moment to funding and financing that kind of team. So one of the challenges is finding a unique project to work on. The first all-British, all-female crew aiming for the Dakar was where we came out. Putting a schedule together, as you say, getting into the championships, a lot of that is dependent on funding. Some of that is dependent on the championships that are available. We were in, as the girls have said, the British Cross Country Championship last year. Girls won their class. There was a nice structure to the season, but that championship isn't around this year. So this year is very much a sort of plug and play, mix and match kind of season, almost treading water, if you like, whilst we ensure that we've got the logistics, the finance and stuff in place to go into Europe next year, compete in 2 or 3 European Bahas, and then down to Morocco for some desert testing. All of those have a myriad of challenges around them, financially, physically, logistically. Claire's done the logistics. I mean, there's an awful lot of planning goes in. There's awful lot of discussions ahead of all that to actually work out what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and then executing the plan going forward.
Thank you. Claire, what do you find most challenging about rallying, and also about different sort of rallies and competing in different disciplines in the rally, in the rally sport?
The biggest challenge I've found is probably just getting the opportunity that you need to progress. Sometimes it's quite easy to get almost, I don't want to say bogged down, that's totally wrong term for it, but you need to keep sort of pushing forward and sort of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to actually, take yourself forward with it. I mean, I'm quite ambitious, and, sometimes it can get quite frustrating if you're not feeling like you're getting the opportunities that you feel like you need to go forward. For me, it was, I've obviously addressed that, and it's been a case of talking to different people, different competitors, co-drivers. That's one thing I love about rallying, is that we are all in it together and we do help each other out massively. I've spoken to so many different co-drivers and they've popped me in the right direction. They give me advice, everything like that. So, that is a big challenge for me, is just feeling like I just need that opportunity just to take me forward again, because I know I can rise to challenges. That's not, the problem. But whenever I have been given an opportunity, like this year, for example, I have snatched it with both hands and, and sort of embraced it. Going for other challenges, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I love the sport so much. I actually wear a little challenge. So, but yeah, I think for me, it's just feeling like you need that opportunity. And, if any of these girls do get offered something that maybe they're not sure about, my advice is just take it. It will not do you any harm going forward. Just learn from it regardless. And, it might not be for you. Maybe it's not the way you want to go, but either way, it's just something you can add on to the CV, and hopefully will allow you to do something else as well. But yeah, different disciplines, again, I find the skill sets sometimes are interchangeable between them. There's a lot that I don't know about cross-country Dakar. still learning, but you know, I'll bring whatever skills that I've got to the fold and ask a lot of questions. That's the only way you can address that.
Jasmine, what do you find most challenging about rallying?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest challenges with being successful is probably to find the right people to support you, because certainly in my case anyway, as a driver, you know, I need a mechanic, I need someone to help me get the car there, I need someone to sit in with me. And I think when you find the right team, it's magic and it just really, really works. But it only takes one person to drop out or some kind of circumstance to change and you're kind of back to the beginning, which, you know, I'm sure Dina's kind of had those experiences with building this team. And I think I agree with what Claire was saying in terms of, you know, where do you go next? Certainly in what I've been doing, you know, it's very much a hobby sport. There isn't a huge profile. There aren't massive opportunities for sponsorship. And so if you want to kind of push yourself beyond just doing it for fun, you know, it's actually really difficult to kind of get to that next level. And I think, you know, maybe that's something that, you know, should be looked at, because I think it's making that transition from grassroots kind of hobby type stuff, winning a plastic trophy, to going to that next level.
Thank you, Jasmine. Katie, there's a question for you that I'm actually quite interested to hear your answer, and it's from Maria Emilia, and the question is, which has been your favorite Extreme E legacy project that you have done so far?
Oh, I wanted to give a shout out to Simra, who asked the previous question, because Simra just moved from, I know Simra, she's actually works in the communications team for Extreme E. She just moved from McLaren, so she's also another female in motorsport that's doing it for well. She actually broke Simra at the last race when we were in Sardinia, so she's been wounded by motorsport as well. So yeah, I think for me, the legacy programs are always super interesting, working with the local communities. You see like another dimension to rally, and I always pinch myself when we get to go on those days, especially mixing with the other drivers in an environment away from the track. You tend to make a lot more friends when it's not so hot-headed and competitive. So I think, as I mentioned, Greenland earlier, also in Senegal was really interesting, seeing the kind of landscape that was there and meeting with the local community and hearing how their sponsorship had employed people that weren't able to send their children to school, and then they were able to finance that during a time of COVID. So it's got a lot of social impacts as well. But yeah, I could go on for hours about it, but yeah, I think if you don't follow it already, then their Instagram shows a lot of the legacy stuff, and the team are out in Greenland at the minute doing some more research with the scientists.
Fantastic. I do have to apologize to Simra, because she did write, "Hi, Katie from Extreme E," and I should have said that, but I apologize. I have my eyes in like 25 different screens, so I'm trying to get as many questions as possible. Next question is for Claire and Jasmine from Nadia. And the question is one we were talking about just before we went live. Claire, Jasmine, how are you preparing to compete in the Dakar Rally 2025? Who wants to go first? Jasmine?
You go first, Jasmine.
I'll go first, okay. Well, for me, obviously, I've only just joined the team, so my first task is to get to grips with the car. Certainly the fact that it's left-hand drive, that's new to me. I've only ever driven right-hand drive before. So it's kind of trying to get in a good rhythm with the car before we go. I mean, I think in terms of the fitness kind of stuff and probably some kind of training around coping with the heat, that probably needs to come sort of next year or the year after when we're a bit closer to the event. But yeah, it's just, and obviously getting to know Claire in particular and the rest of the team, make sure we all kind of gel and work well together. So that's what I'm focusing on.
Claire?
Well, as the co-driver, I think I've got the worst end of this stick, I think. The road book for Dakar, it's extensive to say the least. So, you know, being able to process and read that information and actually deliver it to Jasmine, you know, quite, you know, efficiently, I've got to basically learn how to navigate on Dakar in the extreme heat, you know, undulating terrain, you know, and I don't know if we were on air when Katie mentioned about the size of the dunes, they're like mountains and stuff like that, and, you know, just not wanting to look down as I got to concentrate. But yeah, my preparation will be largely quite logistics, you know, sort of understanding the format of the events, and then obviously learning how to co-drive, you know, navigate on that event, you know, make sure that we don't get lost for a start, because I don't think Jasmine's going to be too happy if we're going way off route and I don't realise soon enough, you know, we are in the desert after all. But also, yes, the physical element of it. I did a rally. Well, it was Ypres in 2017. We were finishing the day sort of, 12 midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning. And I realized then my stamina was absolutely shocking. So it was at that point I realized, right, fitness is key now. So, and I realized that the same is going to be even more so for Dakar, that, you've got to have the endurance and the ability to work under pressure, work when you're tired, when you've got absolutely nothing left in the tank, and, still be a good team member. Someone said to me, when you go to Dakar, you've just got to embrace the suffer. Well, I suppose if I can be fit enough to do that, I'll try. But, yeah, my training is going really well at the minute. I'm really into it. I'm definitely...
You're doing lots of planks now?
Planks. Oh, yeah, seriously, my training is... I don't like coding, but yeah, I can do planks for minutes on ends now. So yeah, it's all good. But no, I tried going for a run the other day in the 40-degree heat that we had here in the UK, and I thought this is just going to be the tip of the iceberg. So I didn't pass out, so that's the main thing. I'm pretty. My training is going well. Spending a lot of time in the hills as well. So doing 10 miles at a time, that's helping massively as well.
Thank you. Jean, what would you add about how the team is preparing for the Dakar Challenge?
I mean, I think there are a number of aspects to it. The girls have referred to sort of the individual elements of fitness and that kind of thing. I mean, the obvious one is a gradual step up, a race schedule. You can't just go and do a North of England comp safari one day and go and drive Dakar the following week. There's got to be a prepared schedule that we sort of hinted at earlier on with European Bajas, desert driving testing in Morocco. We're hoping 2024 will include the Silkway Rally as well. So there's a gradual build up in terms of getting used to the sort of terrain you're going to be driving on in the Dakar, to driving those longer distances, because you can be driving 700-800 kilometers a day in the Dakar, and that's a terrific piece of work to have to do. And I can say that because I'm not going to be doing it, but I have great admiration for these girls that are going to be sat in a hot car for that sort of distance. And Jasmine hinted at another key element, I think, and that is building the right team, recruiting the right team, building it, because you want trust between the people in the car, because quite often they're going to be 50, 100 miles away from the nearest help or support. And for them to have trust in the support team, the support crew, the mechanics and so on around them, that when they get to the bivouac on whatever night, the car is sorted and it's pristine and it's ready to run the following morning. And those guys are kind of crucial to keeping the attempt to drive to the finish on the Dakar going, because that's a tough gig. So trust across that the whole team in those circumstances is absolutely vital.
Thank you, Dean. Now let's get technical. What do you discuss in your engineering debriefs? Grace wants to know. Katie.
So these are kind of ramped up a bit for me in the last couple of years. When you're obviously racing on a circuit, it's a bit easier to kind of analyze things. Whereas when you're in rally, you can try and explain to your engineer what happened, but 50 kilometers ago on a corner that he hasn't seen, it's not that clear. So now you could say there's no hiding when you're on track. We have VBox data that my engineer will overlay with the other drivers, my teammate on track. And he can say to me, oh, you're braking 2/10 too early on this corner or whatever. So for us, we go through literally everything. Timmy, my teammate, we will work until 2 a.m. if we have to, just to make sure that we're both finding what we can from each other's driving styles. With electric powertrains, there's a lot that they can do in torque distribution from the front and rear. So the engineers will work really separately. We have kind of a team of engineers that will be looking at how they can maximize the performance of the car on each surface that we race on. But for us as drivers, we'll obviously be looking at where we're losing time and where we can gain more time. And that comes down to if we need to change any of the map settings on track, we need to plan that with our engineers so they can communicate with that from the kind of spotters area so they can tell us on track. It will come down to sometimes we can sit with each other in testing and Timmy can have a look at my driving style and he can give me tips. because in our championship, the guys are generally more experienced and older than the girls. So it's actually a really positive thing that we can learn from them from that sense. I'm trying to think what else. We get kind of sector time, so we can look at the split sectors even between the flag points and see, oh, you know, you're 2/10 up on load, but 3/10 down on the other. So then you're able to really maximize, you know, your knowledge of the track, and then relay that to your engineers, who are then able to see if it's in the car that you're losing it, or whether it's in your driving style. So it's a big, obviously when you're winning, there's less to debrief on, but it's always, the debriefs are always at least kind of an hour and a half after a run, so that you can really go through each step. And it's always, you know, you have a run plan, and then at the end of the weekend, you always have to do a debrief to the team, as well as what went well, what didn't go well, and try and always reread that as well for next time. And one thing that I actually found really useful, and I still do now whenever I try something new, so when I did my first Baja last year, it was a completely new discipline for me, so I literally wrote down everything that I'd learned. I had something called a rally Bible, which is what coach told me to have when I first started. And it tells you everything. You know, if I did a rally and I found this tire pressure was good on this stage, I'll write that in my book, and then next year when I go back, I've got that knowledge, because you always forget way more than you think you do. So in the Bajas, I was like, oh, you know, don't always be pressing the accelerator on the straight, you're going to break a belt, you need to be lifting. You know, it's all of these small things that you don't think about until you're there and you've done the event. They can save you a retirement, or they can gain you a few seconds on the next time. So I'd say to everyone that's starting out in motorsport, that is like a really big tip from me, is to write down everything, and if you don't use it, it doesn't matter, but every race that you go back to, you can always reread it, and it's not something I still do nowadays. So
I love that, and I'm gonna share a secret with all of you, because some of you watching may want to pursue a career in motorsports as presenters, journalists. You may have noticed by my accent that English is not my native language. I have my own Bible. So how I learned to do this job, besides going to university, is I watch a lot of motorsports, and whilst I'm watching, it can take me 5 hours to watch a race, because whilst I'm watching, I'm stopping and typing everything that the reporter or the presenter or the commentator says, to learn how to say things in a different way, how to present things in a different way, and how to ask questions. So I love Katie's advice. Make sure you type your notes, type everything you learn, keep your own Bible. So I have my own Bible of English motorsport broadcast expressions, just as Katie has her own rallying Bible. So that's very, very good advice. Jasmine, I saw you smiling and nodding to a lot of the things that Katie was explaining. So what is, in your experience, what do you discuss with your engineers? What do you find most useful about engineering debrief talks after an event or test or practice?
I mean, to be honest, I was smiling in kind of awe and fascination of the level of detail that Katie gets out of these debriefs, because I've never had anything like that. I mean, it's very much a kind of, I don't think it landed very well over that jump, and you know, I think the wheel might be falling off, that kind of thing. So yeah, we don't get into that kind of level of detail, but I don't know. I mean, Claire's done more rallying than me. She might have had more of that kind of experience. But I like the idea of the Bible. I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah, no, I can totally, yeah, I'm a big fan of having a Bible. Claire, best teammate you had, Damian wants to ask. I mean, Jasmine is next to you. I know this is a very tricky question.
Okay, so I'm going to upset a lot of people if I actually answer this question, because I've driven for so many different drivers, and every single one of them brings a different sort of thing to it, you know. And as Jasmine quite rightly said earlier, it's about gelling with your teammates. Sometimes you gel a lot better with others. But I think the best one for me was co-driving for Mark Higgins. He had me, no offense, Jasmine, because purely was he never at one point dropped his standards. He had his standards. This is a 3-time British Rally champion and a 1-time British Rallycross champion. So he had his standards, and I had to raise my bar to him. There was no chance on this planet he was going to concede anything that, oh, you know, maybe she doesn't know how to do this. He said to me, I want to do this. And it was up to me to learn it. And I loved being on my toes, or being kept on my toes that much, that I was like, right, game on. I'll show you what I can do now. And it was like, at the end of the event, he just said to me, he said, fair play, well done. You know, that was good. I really enjoyed that. And for him to say that, I thought, oh my God, I've actually just impressed him. That was nerve-wracking. But like I said, you can have so much fun with your driver, and you're almost like in a marriage with them in a way. You know, you tell each other secrets, you know, you have a chat with them, you sort of pick them up when they're down, you know, they G you on if you have to. And you're normally on the phone to them in between events anyway, either bantering or just having a good time. So, you know, you're friends, and, you know, the best thing about being in with people who you really enjoy rallying with, it makes it so much more, you know, a pleasure, really. And you know, it just it's a great feeling, really, when you get to the end and you know you've done well together, and you know you're in it together. Potentially you're in a life and death situation, and it does bring, you know, close together the relationships that you would never have outside of rallying, and they're quite special. So you know, on from a sort of bring, you know, my co-driving kind of thing, that I had to raise my bar with Mark and then a few others. But then there are other drivers then who I love co-driving for purely because of the fun we can have with each other.
Claire, and I'm going to ask you as well the next question, which is a very similar question from the person who sent it, who is anonymous, and also Rachel. And more or less this question is, how can we get work experience in rallying teams? Well, I think because you have been doing both, driving and working in a rally team, what's your opinion? What is your advice?
I would say build up networks with people, you know, go to events and start speaking to people. You know, don't just try and jump in working with a World Rally team unless you go on the M Sport website or Hyundai website or something like that and you see a job vacancy, I know I could do that. Then by all means, seriously go for it. But, you know, my thing with M Sport came purely because I was speaking to people in between events and, you know, building up relationships where you can have chats, and they obviously know what you're doing because I've been putting it on social media that I'm competing at this, competing at that, and you just get talking to people. And you know, it came just as a sort of direct message on Instagram, really. That's how, you know, the M Sport thing came about. But you know, working for teams, you know, I've had a couple of people message me asking, you know, I'd really like to get in as a mechanic on, you know, rallying, and I'm just like, guys, message these teams, you know. And you know, especially these are females that are messaging me as well, so it's really good in that respect. I'm just like, message these people, get talking to them, you know, let them understand what you do, you know, understand what they do, and hopefully then you may, like I said earlier, get the opportunity that you need. But by all means, if you get even just a sniff of the opportunity, take it with both hands and, you know, just go with it like that. But you know, just get talking to people. So the only advice I can give, go to events and get chatting to people. And you know, if anyone has any sort of questions or, you know, want to have a chat about it, you know, message me on Instagram or anything like that, you know, I'll happily talk to people and maybe point you in the right direction if it's something quite specific.
Thank you, Claire. Dean, in your experience in a different role in the team, what would you tell people? What's your advice?
I think I'd echo a lot of what Claire said, really. It is about who you meet, it's about who you talk to, and it's about making approaches. I mean, you know, as a team, we get all sorts of emails, whether it's people wanting to come and work on a paid basis or as a voluntary basis. We get a lot of people looking for interns who are doing engineering degrees or whatever. Sadly, we can't accommodate all of them. There's just far too many. But you know, it's about talking, it's about communication, and it is making those approaches, hunting around the websites, and as Claire said, networking, going to events, whatever. Just get yourself out there. Make contact with the teams and so on social media. It's like trying to find a job or any other business in the wider sense. That, you know, the harder you look, the more work you do, the more effort you put in, the opportunities will come.
Fantastic. Next question is for Katie. I'm going to choose Katie to answer this. Petra wants to know, how much does a great navigation matter in a race?
Oh, it wins the race. I mean, when I was doing the Aragon the other day, I was chatting to my teammate who was his first Baja the year before when he did it, and then he'd done the Dakar over the winter, and it was the first time I'd seen him since. And he said, you know, no pressure, Claire, but he said that the navigation on it really was like 80% of the race, and they are getting lost for like hours at a time, and then it's still possible to win the race because it's just such a tough element of it. I think more in my experience in rally as well, I think I always chose a co-driver if you're able to, and if you have some contacts that are able to put you in the right way with more experience than you. If you're starting out, that's so important because you learn a lot from them. So I first had a German lady who was co-driving me, who'd been with some German champions, and then I had Veronica Engan, who was fantastic because she was Oliver Solberg's co-driver. And actually one of the rallies I did in Latvia, I had Petter Solberg's notes for. And I was doing the recce, and she was sort of saying, why don't we use his notes? And he had so much information in there that I just couldn't, like, my brain, it was just, there was, for every corner that there was, you would have like 10 pieces of information about where it tightened, where it closed. And it was the most surreal kind of experience for me, and I ended up just having to really simplify it because each driver needs something different, you know. And for me, I would hear all that information and then not know whether it was left or right because it had just been like a barrage. So each driver needs something different, but I think the relationship that you have with them, it kind of trumps it all. If it's someone that you can get on with, have fun with, because at the end of the day, this is the coolest sport in the world that you want to enjoy. There's no point in doing it if you're super stressed all the time. So remember that when you're starting out. And I think if you can get someone with more experience that also understands the driving element and can have a feel for what a good pace is. So when I did the Baja, for example, I really relied on a co-driver in the first year that understood the pace of it, because it's different to road and stage rallying where you're on the limit all the time. And that for me is, as a rally driver, we always see like when rally drivers go to do Dakar or Baja, then they kind of often go off in the first day or the first stages because they're used to driving to a pace that isn't sustainable in that kind of off-road rally. So for me, having that knowledge of a co-driver that said, no, this is kind of Baja pace, this is good, and reining it in and telling me when to push, that really can win you the event. And I think we came third on the first stage overall out of about 20 cars, and it was my first time ever doing a Baja, just purely on, not on doing anything special behind the car, but relying on the knowledge that I had next to me and kind of translating that. And I think that's really valuable when you're first starting out.
Thank you very much, Katie. And I'm aware that we're getting to the end of the session. So I have chosen a question from Elizabeth, which I believe is a beautiful question to put an end to today. And I'm going to ask the three of you to answer. So perhaps, Katie, you can go first because you're already on the screen. What gives you the energy to follow your dreams? And I want to add something to this question. What gives you the energy to follow your dreams? And also in this age of social media where we can see what everybody else is doing, and when you want to follow your dreams, but you see somebody else getting better results or more races or more sponsorship, how do you stay motivated to follow your dreams and not to worry about what everybody else is doing?
I think the key thing is to stay focused on what you can control. I've worked with sports psychologists on this as well, where I've ranted and said, oh, you know, I want to be doing this, but I can't find money for it. And I need to be doing this to be quicker. And he said, there's always going to be someone with more and bigger, but you have to, the only thing you can control is what you can control. And he used a really good theory. It was A plus B equals results. A is what's in your control, B is what's not in your control. And he said that will always be the case. So the only thing that you can do to maximize your result is by focusing on A. So that's what I kind of try to remind myself. I know it's difficult, but I think the raw passion for it is what keeps you going. I think, you know, it is very much like being in a self-employed job. There is no definite answer. Yes, you will have a good season, or yes, you will have a good race. I think it's just part of the nature of it is just keeping going, as Claire said a lot, like just keeping pushing and keeping developing. And hopefully you'll look back in a couple of years and think, yeah, I had a really good run and I'm proud of how far I've come. But yeah, just keep speaking to people in the sport with a bit more experience. And I think that's the way that you kind of gain momentum with it, because I really didn't think that half the opportunities that I had, the doors would open. And I think it is a small world and people are really keen to help you. So yeah, if you're afraid, then reach out to people, but never put a limitation on how far you can go, because I think especially as females, now's the time to really push through. And I think there'll be a lot more opportunities in the future as well.
Thank you very much. Jasmine.
Yeah, I think it's true, the point that you made, Marietta, about social media, and it can be very distracting and frustrating sometimes when you see what other people are doing and maybe they're getting more publicity for doing a less good a job. But yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, last year especially, I actually didn't even look at the results until the end of the event, because it didn't really matter to me. That wasn't what I was trying to do. So very much kind of set yourself a goal and just like laser beam focus on that, because everything else really is a distraction. And as Katie said, you know, motorsport is so much fun that in itself is enough to keep you motivated. Even if you have a bad event, I think you come away feeling great. So yeah, that's what keeps driving you on.
Thank you, Jasmine. Claire.
Yeah, I actually wrote a note down then.
Good.
What Katie said, it is the coolest sport in the world, and I think that will motivate anyone who competes in it to keep doing it. Like I said, after my first event, I couldn't sit down. I was just pacing. It was amazing. But for me, I think, yeah, you can have a bad event. There have been a few where I've really questioned myself after an event, but it's having the right people around you who can sort of pick you up at that point. And obviously you return the favor if needs be, but you know, we're such a tight-knit rally and it's such a tight-knit community. And if, you know, people who will come into it, that will be in awe of that when they experience it and feel it, that how good we are at supporting each other and keeping each other motivated. You know, that's where, you know, I really felt like I came into my own, was when I've had the work. I learn a lot about myself when things aren't going right. And I think when you've got the right attitude to take that forward, I'm not going to do that mistake again. You know, you can go on to the next event and, you know, you'll have a better event and then you'll start getting your motivation back. When things are going right, that's the motivation that you need. But I just wrote another note down to myself. Be proud of yourself. Be proud of your achievements. So other people will put other achievements on social media and they will live their best life through social media. But I think you've got to actually tell yourself out loud sometimes, I'm proud of you, proud of what you're doing. And, you know, I've told myself that a couple of times this year already, because I never thought I would be doing some of these things that I'm doing now. And as Katie said, don't limit what you think you can do. Just take that cap away altogether and see where you end up. You know, but yeah, tell yourself you're proud of your achievements, and you know, hopefully that will spur you on as well.
Thank you. I love what you said, Claire. Thank you to the three of you, because I think this is so helpful to not only those of you who want to go racing, but to any of us who wants to pursue a career in motorsport. We're so many times in the same situation. Like, can I get a job in a team? Can I get a job on a TV in this championship? And we can be very hard on ourselves, and to be proud of what we have actually achieved and what we are fighting for. That's so important. Thank you very much, Claire. I have to apologize to all of you that have sent questions and I have not had the time to ask all of your questions. I'm very, very sorry, but thank you very much for being here with us, for taking part in the conversation, asking questions, sharing comments. Thank you very much to all of you who have joined live. Thank you, of course, to Dean, Claire, Jasmine, Katie, for sharing so amazing stories, advice, insights. Thank you very much to Girls on Track UK and to Motorsport UK for making this possible. And for anyone who isn't a Girls on Track community member yet, good news, our community is totally free to join, and we would love for you to be part of this. So have a look at the chat function, because I think Jenny is going to ping the link to join, and the link to sign up to our mailing list also there. Once the webinar has finished, there will be a link to a very, very quick, I promise it's very quick survey, which we would love all of you to complete so that we can better understand what our members want in future. So please take a few moments to complete the survey once the call has ended. It's bye from us for now. Thank you very much again for being with us, to all of you, to Dean, to Claire, to Jasmine, to Kate. I could say thank you so many times, because I have learned so many things from all of you tonight that I can use in my own career in motorsport. And I really hope that from now on I can face my own challenges with the bravery and passion and determination that the three of you have. So I have learned a lot for myself tonight. I'm Marietta Evans, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.